in the game of Paper Thrones, you either win or you die. Let's talk about Conclave.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. Yes, it's just us two today, so please put up with us as much as you can. But before we get into today's discussion or debate, we'll be talking about the movie Conclave. But yeah, before we get into that, we're going to do what we always do each week and give you guys movie recommendations. So, Danny G, what's the most recent thing that you've seen? Actually, do you want me to go first?
You can go first if you want.
Okay, cool. So, guys, the best recent thing that I've seen recently was just yesterday, and it was Moana 2. Surprisingly, I watched Moana 2. Like, I watched animations. I haven't seen Moana 1, by the way, but I don't think you need to watch Moana. But I won't ruin your experience if you haven't, because it didn't ruin mine. I am a fan of animation. I just don't watch it much. But this one, it was a good watch. Besides the whole musical scenes, if you don't know what Moana is about, well, the second film was about her ancestors pretty much communicated. I think it was through like a dream or some sort of traditional ceremony or something like that. Communicated with her, telling her that she needs to find more people, or the people on her island, or pretty much her island is going to soon to exist, because I don't know why, but they just need to find more people. So I'm pretty sure it's due to repopulation. But yeah, so then they go, and she ends up going on a journey through the ocean. It's an interesting journey that she has, and it's a very interesting ending, which leaves you wanting to watch more, I'd say. When I say ending, I mean after the credits, because you know how Disney, they do the whole 2 credit things. I only saw one of the credits. I don't know if there was a second one, but yeah, after the credits, there's a scene that makes you like, oh, okay, I'm interested to see what the third one's going to be.
I haven't seen it, but I heard that it's stitched together from a repurposed series. Is that apparent when you watch it? Like, it was supposed to be a series, and then they turned it into a movie. And if you know to look for it, it's pretty obvious. But
I heard, I have heard, I don't know who it was, but there was someone in Disney. Apparently, they were saying how this wasn't supposed to be a movie at first, but then they were like, no, we're gonna fix it around and turn it into, and we're gonna release it in theaters. It's gonna be a movie. But in terms of if it feels like it's episodes, I can't say I felt it like it was, because number one, I haven't seen the first one, and number two, this just felt like watching any other animation film. So I didn't get that type of feeling. But like I said, I haven't seen the first one, so I don't know how it compares. Maybe if I do see the first one, and I might see a difference, but I don't know. But it just felt like a normal animation film to me. But yeah, Daniel, what did you watch?
So I watched Lady Snowblood, which is a 1973 Japanese martial arts revenge thriller, which is about this woman who is born in prison in Meiji era Japan in the 1870s. And she essentially trains her entire life to become this amazing swords fighter, and then goes out to find the people who are responsible for the death of her mother. So her mother was essentially captured by a bunch of criminals, was grossly mistreated, and then ended up in prison for being associated with these prisoners. And then Lady Snowblood was born in prison, was released eventually, and then has dedicated her life to bringing the people who ruined her mother's life to justice. And the entire thing, like, there seems to be a pattern in Japanese revenge movies where, like, Western revenge movies seem to be all about catharsis and getting back at people and empowerment. And Japanese, but like Asian revenge movies in general seem to be more about how destructive revenge is. Like a few months ago, I watched Old Boy, which is a Korean revenge movie, and that has a similar idea where, like, the pursuit of revenge ends up killing you, or like destroys your life. And Lady Snowblood is kind of similar, where there's all these very bloody, well choreographed action sequences where she just beats up fools with like her umbrella, katana, whatever. But it takes a toll on her as a person, and even when she achieves justice, she's not at peace, kind of thing. So it is kind of interesting to see if you're used to other kinds of revenge movies. This is now the second one in a few months that I've seen. Like, one was Korean, another was Japanese, right? So not exactly the same traditions, but there seems to be a pattern here where, like, there's just a different take on revenge than what we know. Like, in American, a revenge movie will all be about, beating up the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that somebody does something, right? It's fundamentally the root of the superhero genre as well, right? That somebody has power and uses that power to bring justice to the bad guys.
Yeah.
And that's, like, at least adjacent. Like, not all superhero stories are revenge stories, but a lot of superhero origins are rooted in revenge. And the genre is at least adjacent to revenge stories or vigilante stories, right?
Yeah.
So we tend to have a much more, like, I have no idea if this is true or not. Like, I've not studied this. I've not looked up like what people have said about this. It's just an impression I get after having seen now multiple. Like, it just seems to be a different conception of what seeking a revenge does to a person. So that was interesting as that. And also it's just like a really seminal action movie. Like, it's not back-to-back action, but the fight sequences in it are pretty good. And if you've seen Kill Bill, Lady Snowblood is what Quentin Tarantino was smoking when we made a Kill Bill, right? Like, it's a direct influence.
Yeah.
And like, I saw Kill Bill like 20 years ago when it came out, and back then I wondered, like how can you come up with this stuff? Like, this is so creative. And now I know where he came up with it. So it's not a rip-off exactly, but it's a very close homage.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was interesting to watch on that level. It's not like a fun popcorn movie where you like watch just somebody beat up the bad people. There's a bit more to it, and it's less fun in that way, but it's a really good movie.
How did you come across it?
I just saw it in recommendations. I'm subscribed to this subreddit. I saw an old movie where people basically find old movies. I think the rule is it has to be at least 10 years old. And then they kind of post like their basic thoughts on it, and then people will talk about the movie. And like, if you're looking for like movie recommendations for interesting movies to watch, I think the main attraction of that subreddit is just finding old movies you've never heard of. Like, some of them are well known, but there's some pretty obscure ones too, and I've seen a few of them now, and it's a good inspiration for finding older, less well-known movies. And that's why I heard of it, and I decided to give it a go.
Cool.
And I'm glad I saw it. It's not my favorite movie or anything,
Yeah.
but I'm glad I saw it.
I don't remember Kill Bill as well, so it would be interesting to watch both. Maybe I have seen it, but I just can't remember it. So it would be interesting to watch that, and then watch was it Lady and what's again?
Lady Snowblood.
Lady Snowblood. Cool. That's gonna be noted. You know me, I'm gonna have to check out the trailer first. Well, the main event. Daniel, please tell people, let them know what the hell Conclave is about.
All right, so Conclave is a mystery thriller movie set in the Vatican. So at the beginning of the movie, the Pope dies, and following the traditions and protocols, a conclave is called, which is all the cardinals from throughout the world travel to Rome to be sequestered away in a locked room to elect the new Pope. And the story follows Cardinal Lawrence, who is the dean of the College of Cardinals, which basically means he's in charge of the cardinals, and it's his job to run the conclave. So get everybody to the right place, organize the votes, make sure protocol is followed, make sure everything is above board, stuff like that. And as this happens, and as the cardinals arrive and as they begin voting, there is a rift between reformers and traditionalists, and it appears that something fishy was going on in the last days of the Pope's life, and that kind of throws a spanner into the works of the conclave, that it's not going quite as was planned, and it follows essentially Cardinal Lawrence as he kind of watches this political power game unfold. He kind of begins to doubt the process and his own faith and the integrity of the church, and he keeps trying to make this work. And the story is essentially about his experiences of this process and the journey that the personal journey he goes on as he navigates the situation. So that's Conclave. So what did you think of the movie?
I thought that this was a good film when it comes to the way that they portrayed God's word being perverted, literally in the flesh. And obviously it was portrayed for, ambition and hidden secrets, which was interestingly fun. I was surprised. Okay, in terms of, all in all, Act 1, Act 2, great. Act 3, as in the ending, the last 10 minutes. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. But everything before the last 10 minutes, I thought, it was a good watch. Even though church is associated with light, right? The film felt dark, even though and I think that was due to the its aesthetic contribution, in terms of the scenes, and the scenes were light. You guys, it's just the way that it was shot. It felt dark. There was a lot of long shots and the you know what I'm saying, and even the close shots. like everything was just like in light, but it just felt there was like a lot going on. It just felt oddly sinister. And I think that was mainly, and also that was mainly coming from, besides just the look of the film. It was mainly coming from like the church guys that were making like they were making threats, and their behavior, the way that they were acting. It just felt way more serious, like sinister. I would have felt more scared. I don't know. I would have personally. It was a thing where if a normal guy threatened me in comparison to a guy in church threatening me, I would have felt more scared about the guy in church threatening me. It just felt weird. Like you wouldn't really think of a churchman sending threats your way. So it was just crazy the way they were doing it. Especially that there was one encounter between
So it's Cardinal Lawrence, played by Ralph Fiennes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there was one encounter that he had with one of the other. What's the terms that you call them?
Cardinals.
Cardinals, yeah. Where I can't really do a spoiler, but he pretty much found one of his hidden secrets in terms of what he did, and then like the way that he threatened him, that was like, whoa, it was crazy. But all in all, I think the writing was good. Like the writing was really good in this film. Like there was times when you think you found the one in terms of who the new pope was going to be, and then all of a sudden you hadn't, because some crazy stuff or like some crazy revelation, or there's like a crazy mystery will end up coming to light, and then you're gonna have to build towards finding out what that mystery was. And then you found the mystery, like, damn, okay, back to square one. Then and then you reach a stage where you feel, okay, we found the Pope, but then again, or another revelation, back to square one. So I thought the writing was definitely, it was good. Now, the way the film ended, I can't lie to you, I was eager to see if there was going to be backlash, because it felt like it ended, the way that it ended, it felt like this was Hollywood's version of what Christianity should be, or like just pretty much their version of Christianity. So personally, look, we'll talk about it more later, but yeah, all in all, I think 90 minutes was great. I mean, just the last 10 minutes was it was interesting, but everything before that was great.
Yeah, so for me, there's a reason why I opened the video with a Game of Thrones reference, because the first 95% of the movie, I think, are this is essentially a hard-boiled political thriller that happens to take place in the Vatican, right? But it's fundamentally a story about like an organization that's trying to hold an election, and factions are forming and they're positioning and they're making alliances, and they're trying to outmaneuver the other faction, and it's about how much should you compromise your ideals in order to win, and how much can you compromise before a victory is no longer a victory, and stuff like that, right? So I think the bulk of the movie is really nuanced, mature, intelligent, subtle. There's a few lines or scenes where I said, okay, this is getting a little bit heavy-handed, but on balance, like it's really intelligent. It looks gorgeous. I don't normally mention cinematography because I don't know enough about it. But here the cinematography is very slow. Everything is very heavy. I think you called it dark earlier. I don't think it's dark, it's heavy, where you have 2,000 years of history hanging over these people's heads. And the future of that heritage and tradition rests on what they do next. And the way each shot is framed and how big everything is and how choreographed everything is, often you don't even see faces of people. Like everybody is color coded, right? So it's in many scenes you only see the color that they're wearing. Like the cardinals have one color, the nuns have another color. There's like people wearing these purple robes. I'm not sure what their title is, but they're not cardinals, right? So everybody's a cog in a machine, and we're seeing the machine work out the next steps. And the way every shot is framed, it's how slow it is. Everything is very quiet. I think there is music, but there's very little of it. Like if the same story unfolded in like a political context, maybe things would be more fast-paced and louder. For instance, here everything is very somber, very quiet, very slow. And on that basis, I absolutely adored everything I was seeing. And I was riveted throughout, even though this movie is fairly long. I think it's a little over 2 hours. Yeah, exactly 2 hours. And for the most part, I was really like every scene was great. Every scene furthered the story. I have a similar opinion with you about the last 10 minutes, and I think, but it might be for different reasons. In the ending, it becomes so moralizing that the movie no longer tries to be intelligent and just thinks it's just enough to kind of give a big speech full of platitudes, and then everything kind of falls into place. But at that point, we've had an hour and 50 minutes of kind of realpolitik in the Vatican, right? And so the ending does not line up with what the kind of movie we've been watching for the previous almost 2 hours at all. And so for me, I kind of left really unsatisfied because for the bulk of its runtime, the movie had promised me one kind of experience, and then it finished with a completely different kind of experience. And I'd seen from reviews that this is what it would be, so I was prepared. But that is just a mistake, and we can talk about how to fix that in the main discussion. But I think this is like one more case of something I've been complaining about, which is writers thinking they don't need to try if they have a good message. When I say having a good message makes it even more important that you tell it well so that it's compelling and interesting. And this movie does not do that. It kind of just says it's obvious that the ending is good, therefore we don't need to put any effort into it. And on that basis, I was not impressed. All right, let's talk about it.
I just to kind of like go off in terms of to go off what you're saying with the ending. From my like the impressions that the ending was giving me, the reason why I said it wasn't really for me that cool. I'm Christian, I understand it. So it seemed.
And it's also worth noting that like your church is the exact opposite of Catholicism, right?
Exactly.
Like so far down the Protestant spectrum, like the Vatican is the exact opposite of what your church looks like, right?
Exactly. So that's why, like, with me, it wasn't something which like offended me. I'm like, listen, all of the practices over there is nothing that we do. So I don't really like, it doesn't affect me. Do you know what I'm saying? So plus, that's just none of my business. That's why I don't really have opinions when it comes to stuff like that. However, with this one, it seemed, number one, it seemed very rushed, unrealistic, and it just seemed like, and like it was, think about it, right? It was a monumental decision, and then the way that it ended, it was like, okay, so it doesn't really feel like you said. It felt just like an ending which was supposed to be a wow moment rather than the ending which made sense. And like I said, it was unrealistic and it was rushed, but it was something which I think they did to kind of like, I wouldn't say aggravate people, but I would say it's something that was like, it was.
But people are aggravated.
Yeah, people are aggravated, but
I'm coming at this. I'm not a Catholic either, so I'm like I've got like Richard Dawkins books on my shelf. So I'm coming at this from a completely different angle than you.
Sorry, even though it's associated with the same one.
It's supposed to provoke traditional Catholics, So before I saw this movie, I looked up some reviews just to get a sense of what I was walking into, and essentially, like the consensus among Catholics seems to be this is trash. And the more traditional they are, the more they think this. And like to the point of, I don't know if heresy is the right word for it, but like it's viewed as widely viewed as anti-Catholic, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side, you have people praising it because it confirms their politics, right? Especially like the cardinal standing up to the xenophobic cardinal, right? And talking about how we should just all get along. That's being praised in more left-wing circles, right? And everybody kind of just seems to like or dislike this movie on the basis of whether or not it confirms their perspective and their point of view, right? And I kind of stand a little bit outside of that. I think we both do, in the sense that this can say about the Catholic Church whatever it wants. We just want a good story out of it, right?
Yeah.
It's not our business anyway, right? Like this is an internal debate to Catholicism, and we're not part of that either way, right?
No, literally, and I kind of think I don't know, I don't want to say it takes away from the film, but it does take away from the film because now people are concentrating on the wrong things. Like I think the last 10 minutes is the reason why people are dismissing this film, and like even though like everything that we saw before this movie, like before the 10 minutes, was great. You know what I'm saying? So I would low key say that this movie could be classified as I wouldn't say masterpiece, but it's definitely a hidden, like it could have been one of those hidden gems, which is later, acknowledged as a great movie. But I think because of the last 10 minutes, which I wonder, I'm intrigued to find out why he did what he did. I think that was due to his personal reasoning, as in like that was his personal beliefs, and then obviously he portrayed that in obviously that scene that he created at the end, which is fine. That's obviously that's his creative vision for it. That's fine. But it's like it's just now that's not the talking. But like the movie being a great movie is not the talking point. The talking point is the last 10 minutes, which is why I think that took away from the movie. So
I think we have a decent claim at being the only unbiased review of Conclave on the internet, probably.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pretend that's the case.
Yeah.
Because every other opinion I've seen has just used it as a proxy for their own politics. So I think my view is a little bit that, like my main thing is that, I've mentioned this in the non-spoiler impressions, is that movie makers, especially like in the past decade or so, have really latched onto this idea that like a movie that confirms your political views is a good one by default, and nothing else matters, right? It doesn't matter how the story is told. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if it's well made. If it's on your team, then it's good. If it's not on your team, then it's bad. And I think that's the death of storytelling. And I think you can have both, right? Like this is not like an underhanded appeal to say, oh, I don't want politics in my entertainment or something like that. Every entertainment is on some level political, by choosing which story to tell, who the hero is, who the villain is, what the problem is, what a solution is. All of these are political choices, or that at least touch on real world politics, right? That's a decision that's made in the real world, and it informs our cultural discourse and what opinions are out there. And so it's not about why is there politics in my political thriller, right? It's not about that. It's you can have a story that affirms your political point of view, and you can have a well-told story. And those two are not in conflict. And in fact, I think if you are passionate about your message, then you should care about it being convincing. And this is not convincing. Like it's not even at the point where it's not convincing. It just doesn't do anything, because the first hour and 50, like call it the first hour 45, is like this hard-boiled politics, deal-making, power brokering, portraying the Vatican as a worldly political institution with factions and alliances, and like there's votes to win, and as people have said, politics is about winning. And so the goal of the conclave is to have your faction win, because that decides the soul of the Vatican for the next generation, right? Because this is an appointment for life, and this person, like whoever gets elected, might be on the throne for half a century, right? So it's important who wins the conclave, right? And if you want to tell a story about the battle for the soul of the church, right, then you can tell that in an intelligent way. And the director has shown that he's capable of doing this in the first hour 45, because that is very nuanced, very subtle. It makes choices like making the Nigerian cardinal a bad guy. I did not expect that. Right? Yeah. You know what I mean, right? You could have made this preachier by having the Nigerian cardinal be a saint, right? And having the Italian one be, like the next Mussolini, right? But no, the guy is flawed. Like, he's made mistakes and he's politically untenable. And Lawrence has a choice to make on whether or not to make this public and kill probably the best chance his side has for winning, right? Like once...
You're talking about the what's his name? The African guy.
So Cardinal Adeyemi.
Yeah.
He's the Nigerian candidate. Yeah. And he had the sex scandal, right, for 30 years ago. And the American cardinal engineers a situation where the woman who had his child happens to be assigned to essentially catering. And so they run into each other. And so there's a scene. And so he's no longer tenable, right? And I think if the movie just wanted to be as preachy as possible, they would not have put that in. They would not have put in this dilemma of, okay, this guy, number one, this would be like having an African pope would be a big statement, right, for the church. And he's also politically viable, right? He's the strongest candidate on the reformer camp. But he had the scandal. That means if we elect him, we're continuing with, the tradition of cover-ups that we've had for the past century.
Yeah.
Right. So that is an interesting dilemma. Like, if you want to write interesting political stories, you put in dilemmas like this, where you have to make a choice, and each choice comes with a cost, right? So they have shown that they are capable of doing this. But then when it comes to the election of Benitez, right, the guy's just a saint. Like, he knows the right thing to do. But he doesn't have to, like, he knows the right thing to say, but he doesn't have to do anything. There's no indication that he is a good political leader. There's no indication that he would be a good pope, other than he says the right things, but we don't even know if he's sincere, right? The previous pope seems to have believed it, because he orchestrated this whole conspiracy to maneuver Benitez into place, right? So the idea is essentially he made Benitez a cardinal in secret and kind of hid him away in Afghanistan, right? That's something that's not even an official, I don't know what the name is. I think parish is the wrong congregation, I guess. And he kind of just shows up at the last minute, surprising everybody. And he just sits back and he keeps gathering votes. It's not even clear why anybody votes for him, because he hasn't said anything yet. Yeah. He seems to be completely inexperienced. But then he's voted like pretty much out of nowhere, is voted Pope in the end. And that is viewed as a big step forward just because he's intersex, just because of who he is. There's no substance here, right? And I have an idea for how to rewrite Conclave to fix this. So,
but before you go into that, doesn't that contradict like the reason? Obviously, that it does contradict. It contradicts the reason for why the previous Vaticans didn't become the Pope as well, because it follows on. So it seems like he's made. Is that a plot hole? Was it, or was that intentional in terms of like, because even though the ending was ambiguous, but the cheering does indicate that, okay, cool. The Mexican, I forgot his name, but the Mexican Vatican, what ended up being the Pope, I assume.
Yeah. No, he was elected Pope, yes.
Yeah. Oh no, he was, but in terms of I don't know if because I think the ending was indicating if, obviously it built up to after that, I was unsure if he had him stripped or if he was still going to be the Pope. Because I know he was elected as a Pope.
Yeah.
But
I didn't pick up on anything that indicated that Lawrence had done anything. I think he could destroy Benitez by making this public, right?
Yeah.
Making the medical records public. And he chooses not to. And that's
what I was going to say. Isn't that contradicting in terms of obviously what happened before with the other Vaticans as well? So is it because with this is his name Benitez?
Benitez is the Mexican cardinal, yes.
Yeah, but with Benitez, I understand. Look, I get why it was a thing why they just chose him, because he did give that kind of like angelic aura about him, and he was different from the rest. Because the others, they were like, their ambition wasn't coming from God, whereas with Benitez, it was a thing where you could say, okay, maybe the difference was his ambition could be seen as coming from God. However, with Lawrence, he's stuck to like what kind of like changed his rule, if that makes sense, because his rule before was, okay, no, we need to kind of abandon what we're used to, which is obviously because the church has a bad name. So if pretty much you have a past which will affect us in the future, it's not going to be you. But with Benitez, it's like all of a sudden he just abandons that. So it's like,
well, there's no there would be scandal, but mostly because people wouldn't want an intersex pope. That is why it's a liability for Benitez, right? That is why it's been kept secret, and that is why Lawrence chooses not to make it public.
Yeah.
With the other ones where he makes the like the financial records and the travel records and everything public, is because now he's exposing a crime. Right, all the other cardinals that Tremblay, right, the Canadian one, I think he bribed people, right? So basically the other cardinals that get outed by Lawrence have actually committed crimes, and they've actually like used church money to spy on people or entrap people. There was this whole thing about getting the Nigerian nun assigned to Rome and just in time to embarrass the Nigerian cardinal, right? So these were all dirty tricks at minimum and criminal at worst. So that is why Lawrence blows the whistle on. Being intersex is not a crime, right? It's just something most cardinals would not want. It would make him unelectable, but it's not a crime, right? It's not a moral failing of Benitez to be intersex, right? So if he doesn't make this public, then Benitez will get elected. If he does make it public, then he's undermining his own goals, which is to make the Vatican more accepting and more inclusive and things like that. And also in the logic of the movie, which I don't buy, but in the logic of the movie, it would deprive the church of a good leader, right? Like the movie wants us to believe that Benitez is a good leader, right? Because of his moral intuitions, and that's it. And the church would benefit from him being in charge. And Lawrence has the ability to prevent that from happening, right? So that is his decision. And that is why he could destroy or not destroy Benitez politically. Yeah. And this is done by somebody who is on the verge of leaving the church, right? Because his faith has been wavering, and he's disillusioned with the church, and now he's put in charge of this, and he essentially decides the future of the church, right? So I think there is good stuff here. My problem is just with how one-dimensional Benitez is, and how heavy-handed this whole thing is, like this whole messaging at the end is, and I said earlier that I have a rewrite for this, and it does not involve removing or changing Benitez at all. It basically just involves making that choice more public and earlier in the movie. So I would make two big changes. One is you make that choice of should people vote for Benitez or not earlier and more public. Maybe instead of just Lawrence knowing it, more cardinals know about it. and they have to choose between their personal attitudes and the future of the church, right? So voting for somebody who they find objectionable for the good of the church, right? But essentially, right? And now and essentially those decisions determine whether or not Benitez still has the majority or not.
Yeah.
Because now there's an actual choice involved and not just one person kind of agonizing in a closed room alone, right? So there's, I think, one of the story problems with it. And we have this whole scene where a couple of reformer cardinals are kind of standing like in the staircase, right? And they basically talk about pragmatism, right? About how important pragmatism is in politics, and that like this whole thing about we serve an ideal, but that doesn't mean we have to be ideal and things like that, right? Which I think was really good. It was essentially like a lot of people, especially like on the political left, have this problem with purity, where they want somebody to celebrate as opposed to actually winning, right? And having people come to terms with this and saying, like, we have to kind of settle for a not ideal candidate if that means we win and then we get 80% of what we want instead of 0%, stuff like that, right? That would be an interesting message and something that its audience might want to hear or need to hear, maybe. I want something along those lines, right? And then the second part of it is to make Benitez actually a good leader. And I think he has the ingredients for it, right? Because he has served in some of the most difficult congregations in the world, right? He's been in war-torn Congo, he's been in Iraq, and he's been in Afghanistan, right? So he knows what it's like to lead under difficult circumstances. We just never see him do it. We are just told that he does, right? But we never, like, he's completely passive in the story. And I think fixing that is the important part, where like he gives this one speech, but it's purely moralizing, right? Where it's about where the traditionalist cardinal has this big speech about how Muslims are a threat and must be fought, and he then stands up and for the first time in the movie says something which is essentially let's all get along, right? Like there's not much more to it. And what if he actually is like a competent politician, right? Who knows how, like, this guy has probably maybe worked with the Taliban, right? Like, what's a cardinal who has worked with the Taliban like? I don't know if that's like if he would actually have to, if he would have left. Maybe the movie was made before the Taliban took over Afghanistan again. But like the guy has worked under difficult circumstances, right? And he has worked with some not so nice people. And like, why don't we see how that has forged his political skills? So he can form alliances that nobody else can. But at the same time he can lead them towards good ideals or something, right? But actually show us him doing this instead of just having him be a fully formed saint that doesn't have to prove anything, and just have him be good because of who and what he is, because that's what the movie ends up saying, and I think that's reductive and not a very good message.
Because I think the reason why they did that approach is because the whole angelic approach, because like I said, he feels like he's borderline sinless the way that he was behaving. So I think so I think they were trying. So I think that was the reason why they didn't really do much with his character, because they said, okay, this guy's pretty much the Jesus out of the whole group. So you know what I'm saying, so yeah. So he practically walk on water. You know what I'm saying, so but I hear what you're saying, and I do agree.
Everybody is a little bit flawed and kind of realizes the political realities of this environment, right? But Benitez is shielded from all of it just because that's what the movie's core audience wants to see, right? But not because it's a good story or anything. And it makes him like the least interesting character in this entire movie. It doesn't have to be this way. Like, what if he's the best candidate they've had in 100 years, but people will not vote for him because of what he is?
Yeah.
Like, that's an actual dilemma.
Yeah.
Now, and what if half the movie, like, what if like this becomes known, at least to Lawrence, halfway at the 50% mark, and the second half is him trying to convince cardinals to switch their vote to Benitez. He needs 5 more votes, and we have to find those 5 cardinals, whatever, right? And like he's a competent leader by himself, and he's close to a majority, but then it becomes known that he's intersex, right? And now that is in danger. Now Lawrence has to scramble to build a new coalition. And now we have all these scenes with cardinals kind of talking about their conscience and about their prejudices and about their views, right? And about what the church should be and who should lead it and so on. Like, there's so much potentially for a more interesting story, and the movie neglects to tell that story, inject that circumstance into this hardboiled realpolitik thriller, that has like this weight of 2,000 years of tradition and all these institutions and all of this protocol and all of these things, right? Like resting on it. Like that's a really cool story, and that's what I wanted to see, and I didn't get it just because the writer thought it was not that important. And that upsets me a little bit. The director can make any movie he wants, and I can like or not like it, right? I have no right to tell the guy what kind of movie to make. But I'm just saying you made a worse movie because of this. You were doing so well, and then you lost the plot, right? and notice how my rewrite, like fixing a movie, does not involve removing Benitez, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a really interesting dilemma if you handle it well and if you handle it intelligently. And it just didn't. And this is not the only movie that does this, right? Like it's seemingly every movie in recent years has been doing this, and it's the death of good storytelling. Like we could have gotten a really interesting story out of this, and instead we got this. And that's the part that upsets me.
It feels like their personal needs and their personal wants kind of like overshadows like the structure of how a film should be in terms of like it making sense, or not even it making sense, but it having some sort of significance.
It makes sense. It's just not.
It's just not as significant or impactful as it should have been. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just something which is like, okay, this is your opinion and this was what your main message was in the film, but your main message wasn't executed the way that it should have been, because just with everything that happened before it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do agree with what you're saying though. I agree. It's just, I wonder, right? Because
I was really on board with this movie as long as we were like this whole subplot about Adeyemi. Because that is the kind of dilemma I want to see.
That's when it got sticky, and I was like, okay. And that felt so like realistic as well, because you hear like crazy stuff that happens in, obviously I don't know, like I said, there's different denominations. I'm not that denomination, but you do hear crazy stories happening in the church, and that's something that's very common. So the way that it kind of like transpired, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. Even like the scene that he had when he was starting to cry, obviously in front of I'm just gonna call him the main cardinal because I'm always gonna forget his name. Yeah, but like that scene there was so touching. He was like, please come pray with me. I was like, oh my god. That's when it like the stakes there. I was like, oh crap, this movie is actually getting really good, really good. But I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Like handle Benitez's situation with the same kind of nuance and intelligence as the Adeyemi story. And I'm like I preach the virtues of your movie from the rooftops, right? I don't know if that's the right Bible quote or not. I don't know. But like that's like I do that all day, right? Because I want those kinds of movies, right? And it upsets me when we don't get them just because of like the navel gazing of the people who get to make movies. That just annoys me. And like there was other stuff in there too that I really liked, like especially in the first 20 minutes or so, when they discover the Pope and they go through all of these steps of sealing the room and creating the timeline and stuff like that, right? There were like a whole bunch of interactions, I don't know if you picked up on this, where cardinals were talking to each other and there was like fierce battles going on. I was in a full room full of pensioners, so I couldn't take notes. So I think I was the only person under 60 in that room. Okay. I think there was one carer who had brought somebody who was around 90. But like I was way below the average age. That's not a dig on anybody. That's just who this movie appeals to. Right? So I can't quote the exact bits, but there were like, as they were creating the timeline and locking and sealing the room and everything, there was a battle going on for the narrative of how the Pope died. Do you pick up on this?
Yeah.
And there were like negotiations going on. Like somebody was trying to push his agenda, and then somebody else blocked it. And there were, and then somebody realized, okay, I've overplayed my hand, so now I have to back off. There was this really subtle politics going on that I thought, oh, I'm in for something special if this keeps up. And unfortunately, it didn't.
So it crumbled for you. When did it start crumbling for you? Was it in the introduction of when the bomb goes off? So throughout the movie, there are suicide bombers in Rome, right? And there are hundreds of people dead, like not just in Rome, but in like throughout Europe, right? And it's not clear why exactly they're doing this. Maybe it's just to protest like the election of the Pope or something, which is not how these groups operate really, but okay. But it's completely ignored, right? Because they're sequestered and they're not supposed to be influenced by outside events. But then the actual vote itself is bombed, right? Like in the most ineffective bombing I've ever seen. Like it's like 20 meters up and there's some rubble.
Like, but there's no bomb in, like, I don't know. Like, if I wanted to kill some cardinals, hello YouTube censors, I could think of better ways, right? But it's an explosion and some people get some scratches, and that's it. Like, there's no other consequence. Like, there's no added security, no vote is being postponed. There's no consequences to it. So that's already a weak sign of storytelling, right? There was actually like an image that I quite liked, which was they are sitting, it seems to be some kind of auditorium. And you've got like these 20 cardinals, right? And they've got like dust on their shoulders, and they've got scratches, and I think some people have band-aids or something. And they're essentially talking about what happened. And you have this, like the traditionalist Cardinal Tedesco goes on a racist rant about Muslims, right? Essentially saying we let in, like, we've got enemies at the gates and we've been letting them in, and look what they're doing, right? And that was a chance for some actual interesting debates, right? And that is the scene where Benitez says something pretty much for the first time. Not quite the first time. He actually, like, one thing that, like, I've been criticizing Benitez or the writing of Benitez a lot, but there was actually one really interesting one where after the event happens, and I think they're at dinner, and he says grace. I think I might be getting the sequence wrong, but he says, no, I think this was before the attack, but he says grace essentially, and he does the kind of rote standard one, and then everybody thinks, okay, it's over, let's start eating, and then he continues and lectures everybody that they've lost sight of, like, the true mission of the church, which is to care for the poor, and everybody's just shamed into listening to this. And he does it, I think, in Latin too, as well. So that all the traditionalists are paying attention. And like the use of Latin in this movie too, really interesting. When people speak Latin is really interesting too. So I wanted Benitez to do this. Like that showed actually political talent, right? Where he knew that everybody had to listen to him, and they couldn't leave and they couldn't object. They couldn't object to what he was saying because he was just saying the extended version of the prayer, right? I'm assuming. But on the surface, nobody could reasonably object to what he was doing, but he was shaming them, right? Yeah. And that I thought that was cool. But that was the only time he did anything interesting. And then in the auditorium, he just gives this moralizing speech of we should all just, like, he's not even talking about turning the other cheek, right? He's just talking about let's be nice to each other. And that's it. And that was the part where I said, okay, fine, okay, we've arrived in the stupid portion of the movie. I can stop paying attention now.
That was more of a political message than anything.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's what that from that point on, that's what that's about.
Yeah.
Like also the thing about how he gets his majority. Like he goes from, like, we see him slowly getting more votes. He started off with 1 vote, then 2, then 4, but we don't know why. And then after his big moralizing speech, he gets a majority. And not just like you need a two-thirds majority apparently. So that coming out of nowhere is a big deal. So everybody just changes their mind. Like they've never heard this before. These 150-year-old cardinals, they've never heard this before.
Yeah.
They like somebody says, oh, if you put it like that, yeah, of course. Right? That's the big resolution at the end.
Yeah.
So it's not so much about what's being said, it's more about how it's being said and how one-dimensional it is. Like, I want Benitez to actually be like a savvy, pragmatic politician, but he uses that power for good, as opposed to for self-enrichment. Wouldn't it have been cool if there had been something about how he's been dealing with Muslim politicians in Iraq and Afghanistan for years? So he's seen all the good and bad that part of the world has to offer. And what's his name? Tedesco doesn't know what he's talking about, because he's just the Alex Jones version of that. And Benitez actually knows how the world works because he's been there, right? Like, give me stuff like that, and I'm 100% on board with this movie.
How would you say this film compares to the rest that we've seen this year?
Well, it's 2 different movies, right? The first hour 45.
Yeah.
9.5 out of 10.
Oh, damn.
And the last 15 minutes, like 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Right? And my main thing is that they could do better. They've shown that they can do better, because the first part is full of stuff like this, the kind of stuff I'm talking about, right? It's just the end where they say, okay, we don't need to try anymore because now it's time for the message.
Yeah.
That really annoys me.
Yeah.
Other things I really liked was everything to do with the nuns, right? Specifically, there's Sister Agnes, who's in charge of the nuns in the Conclave. And then you've got Sister Shanumi, who is the Nigerian nurse, who's essentially a pawn in this story, right? When Lawrence talks to Shanumi behind closed doors, do you notice how terrified she is?
Yeah.
but without saying anything, right?
Yeah.
And just her inability to answer a simple question says so much if you've paid even a little bit of attention, like in the last 30 years, in terms of like news surrounding the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know that she knows stuff and she can't say anything because she's been bullied into silence, right? And even if somebody with the best of intentions like Lawrence comes along, she's unable to trust him. And that says so much about her point of view. She doesn't need to give a big speech. Her reaction without a single word tells you everything you need to know. That's the kind of subtlety I'm looking for. And that's good storytelling.
And I think as well, there was a scene where she finally does end up trusting him. And I think because she could see that, okay, he's not like the rest. I think in the speech that she made in the lunchroom,
was that Shanumi or was that Agnes? Because Agnes also has a big speech. So this whole thing about we are meant to not be heard, but still God gave us eyes and ears.
Did she say that together? As in, because that's when she revealed when one of the other cardinals was responsible for bringing the Nigerian nun over.
I don't remember the Nigerian nun having a speech.
No, the Nigerian nun didn't have a speech, but I'm saying the speech that one of the nuns had in the lunchroom.
Yeah, that's Sister Agnes. Yeah, she gives this big speech, and it's technically polite. She technically stays within the confines of what she's supposed to do. Yeah. And like she does this, I think she bows at the end, kind of does the proper respect, like shows the proper respect, right? But everybody is stunned into silence.
That was great.
Because up until this point, I don't think any nun has said anything in public.
Yeah.
Like in private, yes, but not like in the big room, right? And so for her to have like a 1-minute speech, it hits differently, right? Because like this is out of protocol. Exactly. And she's risking a lot doing this. And she walks exactly up to the line, right? She knows exactly how far she can push this before it gets dangerous for her. That, again, has a lot of subtext. Like that choice, like her choice as a character to how to do this and how to do this, says so much about the politics of that organization, right?
Yeah. And that subtext was obviously like it was shown before, as in like through obviously the way that the Nigerian nurse was acting, obviously, and the views around the Vatican in terms of like you can even see that in the responsibilities in the church. Like a lot of the times they were in the kitchen and they were even speaking when they were in the kitchen. So you could really tell what that environment was like for obviously women in the church. So when that scene happened,
it still is, right? Like that's what
it still is. But I was gonna say I could even feel like I felt like scared for her when she spoke out. I'm like, damn. And then the way that she, like you said, she was polite about it. Then she gave a little bow at the end, and then she walked out. I was like, yeah, she's a bad man. She's a bad man.
Yeah. So this movie is capable of really nuanced plots and performances, right?
Yeah.
So Benitez not having that is a choice.
Yeah.
It's not like they couldn't do anything better. They could, and they've done it like 5 times in the movie. And that's the part that irritates me so much. Like if this was just a polemic, then okay, fine. I've seen those before. They're not very interesting, but it is what it is. But this movie is like the thing that really aggravated me is that this movie, it's almost like they're showing off. Like they're showing off, just look what we're capable of, and we're not going to give you that in the end. You're going to have to listen to our sermon. Right? Like,
No.
It's like I'm sure it's not on purpose, right? It's just what they think the movie should do. But like that contrast is there, right? And it's big. So yeah, it's like the poster child for that kind of storytelling now.
It became a fight movie, in my opinion, in terms of obviously the ending. Because I keep going back to the ending because the ending is unfortunately the talking point. It's good.
The ending is the punchline.
Exactly. So it's one of them ones that we're gonna have to keep talking about it. And then of course Benitez is a character, but like the ending is something that we have to keep talking about. Well, for me personally. So I do understand. I get it. It's like it's something which is like it didn't have to become a fight movie. Like you said, it could have just been like it was. I don't want to say it was a borderline masterpiece, but it was on the verge of.
I'm happy to call it one. Like like when it's good, it's really good.
Exactly.
Like honest, like a couple of lines that were a little bit of a cheap shot, and they were there to make the audience laugh and not in agreement. But on balance, it's I think it's amazing. Yeah. I don't know how accurate it is to how the Vatican actually works, but just as a story, like how it's constructed and how ideas are unfolded and how characters make choices, all of that is top tier storytelling until the end.
Yeah, I agree, and it's interesting. Like it's I don't really want to make this political, right? And obviously, like I said, Catholic.
Too late.
I'm not Catholic. That's not my denomination. But it's like, as a Christian, right? It seems like a lot of people. I understand why people would I get why they would want to provoke Christianity in general, because obviously they have had past experience with Christianity in general, which is why I never when I see stuff like this, I just kind of I'm like, okay, whatever, it doesn't affect me because I already have a relationship with God. It is what it is. But I just haven't it just kind of I have a personal grievance with it, because it's why don't you do, if it was a thing which was consistent with other religions, then I'll be like, cool, this is something that's done in general. And I understand, I get why with personal experiences. But it's things where it's just kind of it's always done with Christianity. And it's for me, I'm like, why just Christianity though? Why don't you have kind of the balls to do it with other religions? If you had done it with other religions, then I'd be like, cool, I get it, I understand.
So,
but it just seems like with, you like picking on the little guy, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of affects people that don't necessarily, because I think people, like I said, one reason why I really like this movie is because it kind of shows human perversion of the word in the flesh, right? And a lot of people think, okay, God is bad due to the fact of what the church is doing, and the church is supposed to be a representation of God. But my argument is, I get church is a representation of God, but at the same time, you have to understand who's behind the evil doing is man, is not God. So, do you know what I'm saying? So it's blame man, don't blame God. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
but don't they do in the movie? They say things like, we serve an ideal, but we are not ideal. We're not all saints, kind of. They do say, we still have to do this work in the world.
But a non-believer is not going to take it like that, though. A non-believer, yeah, well, you did, but a lot of non-believers are just going to be you see, this is why this religion is terrible, etc., etc. And it's no, it's not the religion, it's the man. It's not the religion, it's the man. I just have an issue that they always like to kind of provoke Christianity, to provoke this, this religion, but they don't want to do it to other people, other religions either.
So that's just... to play devil's advocate here, do you know what the devil's advocate is?
Do I so whenever when I even say to play devil's advocate,
so
just to
the devil's advocate was a position that the Vatican had when they declare saints. They had a devil's advocate who essentially made the case against making that person a saint. Okay. And then at some point in the 80s, an atheist volunteered to make that case, and then they abolished the office. Since then, they haven't had any devil's advocates.
Yeah, that's so. Thank you for that.
So, because he argued, I think he argued against making Mother Teresa a saint, and that was so unpleasant that they have not invited anybody to be devil's advocate since. But Christianity is the predominant institution in our culture, right? And there's no denomination of Islam that is as important as the Vatican in our society.
I see.
Right? The Vatican has 1 billion people under its influence and under its authority. So what they do is important, globally, for a lot of people. Even just things that impact its members, right? We're not even talking about wider politics or anything. So I think that is basically why. I do think that you can criticize other cultures as long as the criticism is factual and constructive. If it's just about demonizing other people, then not so much. But if you are actually applying standards fairly to everybody, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the reason that a movie like this movie was made and not I don't even know what the equivalent for another religion would be. The Vatican is kind of unique in being such a big institution that is monolithic, right? I don't know what other religion is that monolithic, if any. So that would basically be the counter argument for that. That's why that's happening.
But but Islam, you could say, for example, Islam is something. Even though there were obviously criticism of Islam in this movie in terms of the people that were more traditional Vaticans, but still Islam has had an impact, for example, on. But
there's no central authority in Islam that you can criticize like this.
Sure.
There isn't one, neither major branch of Islam is as monolithic and as institutional as the Catholic Church is. So you can't just criticize Islam because there's many different versions of Islam. It's holding you accountable for what some evangelical church does or what the Ku Klux Klan does. That's all versions of Christianity, but you have nothing to do with that. So I can't hold you accountable for that. But the Catholic Church is one institution, right? And you can hold an institution accountable for its policies and its actions. So I think that is a difference. Not that like that's my big pet issue or anything like that, but I do think there's a difference.
I see. I can see that. It seems like, unless you have anything else to share, we've ended up in a... Should we end up in a political note, or should we end up...
Oh yeah, let's go for it.
You know, oh no, I think we already ended up.
Anybody who has a problem with that already clicked away.
Yeah.
But like, if you dislike this, check out our Wicked review, which is an hour of discussing racism.
Yeah.
Like, so that's another light, fun and light discussion to have, like over dinner or something.
We even speak about the Nazis about that one.
So racism last week, religion this week, next week politics.
Let's get to it, man. Well, all right. I think it's time for last thoughts. It's time for, unless you have anything else that you want to bring up.
No, I think I've done enough.
Cool. All right. Well, last thoughts, Daniel.
So bottom line is, like the first 90% of the movie are absolutely excellent. Among, like, maybe not the best movie I've seen this year, but among the best. And then it completely drops the ball in the last 10, 15 minutes. And what upsets me is not so much that it does that, but it does that on purpose. It thinks it's doing something good and important by doing this. And in doing so, it's depriving us of a good story, and it's depriving us of a good argument for what the movie is trying to do. And one thing that like writers in general need to remember is that if you think you're in the position to teach somebody something, like what they should believe or to adopt your point of view, the first step in teaching is seduction, meaning you have to get people to a point where they want to listen to you first, and then you can give your message. If you skip the first part, the only people listening to you are the ones who already agree with you, and at that point I have to wonder whether what you're doing is all that constructive. So, and this movie is a big exercise in doing that, and it could have been so much better if it had just stuck to its own rules and the way it portrays characters and conflicts and dilemmas, and simply applied that to its hero, right, who is Benitez. And if it done that, then I would be singing the praises of this movie, and I would celebrate it as something that should be more talked about and should not just be seen by people over the age of 90, which is what's happening currently. So that's my bottom line. So final rating 5 out of 8 for this reason.
For me, like I've mentioned before, I loved the way that they portrayed pretty much man's way of perverting the religion, because that kind of does reveal, like it does kind of like enforce the message that this isn't God, this is man. The reason for why a lot of, you see, like, you know, we hear all the scandals and the stories that come out of churches, especially that denomination. I'm not trying to
those guys over there.
Well, yeah, those guys over there. You know what I'm saying? So just I like the way that they portrayed it, and I just like the whole eternal conflict and just the unravelment of certain things and how it kind of came together. Now, like I can agree the ending was, like I said, it was rushed and it just didn't kind of fall in line with everything. The final piece didn't fall in line with the other pieces prior to that. So I think overall, like I said, could have been a masterpiece, but unfortunately due to the ending, it didn't live to its name. Oh yeah, so yeah, man, I might have to give this one I'm gonna say 6.5 out of 10.
Still better than Madam Web, I believe.
Oh, way better than Madam Web. Speaking of Madam Web,
that's the benchmark for all movies.
Yeah, that's the benchmark for. Should we say Madam? What about that? What's that? Okay, you know what? Let's not even get to that.
I think you get that one a 5.5.
Okay, guys. Thank you for tuning into today's episode.
So if you like this discussion, tell a friend. If you dislike this, tell an enemy. And if you take any issue with what we said, send it to notourproblem@gmail.com.
All right, guys. Thank you. That was actually really good. All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in today. And yeah, man, we'll see you again next week. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.